So I'm going to invite you to take this breath with me and to remember that part of what our reading said was that you are created of love, that there is this one power that created all that is, and we can call it by many names, but it is the one single power of love. And that is the language that transcends all differences. That is that which softens us when we want to argue. It is that which softens the heart, opens us up so that we may embrace everyone and everything just as they are, for we are all having our own experience of finding our way back home together. And all that is a waking up and a remembrance of that perfect alignment with love, with the all that is, with God. And that's our only role here. That's it, nothing else. And so part of what that reading said is that the Creator, that God created only one thing, only one creation, and it is you. And that you have been created, we have been created like unto the Creator, which means that we are love. And so place the hand before the heart, because what this means is it means that you are loved. So say with me, I am loved. I am loving. I am lovable. Now and forevermore. That's the unchanging nature of who and what we are. And it is how we serve in the world. And so everything else that shows up, unlike love, is a dream and an illusion that we have made up in our dream state, in the state of Maya, that we've just fallen asleep for an instant. And that's all it really is. And in any holy instant, we can wake up and we can remember again. This is a day called Father's Day that is infused with so many emotions. And so we started our conversation last week with the idea that we are here to embrace our feelings and our emotions. And that we fall asleep indeed when we try to suppress them, when we try to reject them, when we try to eject them into the world. Sometimes feeling what we feel and the emotions that we have are really uncomfortable. And I said last week that we are as sick as our secrets. And I realize that that can be a harsh statement for anyone who's experiencing an illness or having a trial of some sort. But if we can remember what our reading said, it said that we are in each and every moment at choice in our lives, and that we get to choose how we experience life. We are always at that choice point. And the pathway home is to feel the feelings and the emotions that come up. And that the feelings, there were no bad feelings, that all of them are embraceable by love. There's nothing about you that is not embraceable and healed by love. And that the emotions that we have are really reactions to our feelings. And that those reactions are either love or they're fear. And in our fearfulness, we want to push away our thoughts and our beliefs and our feelings about what is so. So this is our pathway home, that our feelings are our guidance system. And on a day when we celebrate a divine masculinity, one of the things that I am aware of in our culture and in our conditioning is that we have put half of the population in a box of what feelings are acceptable to be felt by the men in our community. And I want to acknowledge that that on this day called Father's Day, and where we're looking at the divine masculinity, that we want to elevate the idea of what it means to walk forth with the masculine qualities that have seemed to define what a man is. And I know that it might seem odd having me share about this, but I feel such a great sense of love for the men in our community and for those who identify with the masculine qualities predominantly. Because what I think that we see happening in the world is an evolution of this. We're in the midst of it right now. And in my dad's generation, it was very different. And there are some in this room who are of my dad's generation. And then there's the next generation. And there's this kind of like a foot in both spheres, if you will, both generations, if you will. And we're in the middle of it. And I think what we're seeing and beholding is a transformation that I am so happy to be a part of. And if anybody here is familiar, there's a magazine that's called Natural Awakenings. Are you familiar with it? We have them in higher grounds and throughout our campus, and they actually have an article actually this month, and it's entitled Healing the Modern Man. Healing the Modern Man. I sounded really from Ohio when I said that. Healing the Modern Man. Men Redefine Their Emotional Power. And it's by Marlena Donato. And what it talks about, very briefly, it talks about gender roles and conflicting cultural expectations and the heavy toll that it has taken on the men in our culture in particular. That idea of the tough guy, the idea that, you had to be rugged individual and pull yourself up by the bootstraps and not show your emotions. And to me, this dovetailed perfectly into our conversation from last week, because if we are as sick as our secrets, that then outpictures in what we see in our society, an imbalance, if you will, and a group of our population that hasn't had permission to be authentic. And so part of this conversation is a conversation to acknowledge that, to love the men in our community, and to begin to create a spaciousness and a safety within which the authentic masculine divinity can come through in our community. So it actually says this, and I was shocked when I read this. It says that American Journal of Men's Health in 2020 said death by suicide is 4 times higher in men than it is in women. And this really felt like it pertains to what we're talking about spiritually here. And that when boys come in as babies, they're just as emotionally expressive as girls. And that somehow we squash that. And so what we're calling forth here is just an honoring of the men in our community, but an honoring of all of us, of how important it is to feel our feelings and to be authentic and to understand that it is those feelings that become our pathway home and awakening. And I can tell you from personal experience that there is nothing more powerful and courageous and attractive than when the men in our community embrace and behold and express themselves fully. I have a funny story to kind of share about that, because I was raised in this culture too, about what would make a guy. And the first time I met my husband, we were sitting in a sanctuary, not unsimilar to this, and we were sitting next to each other, and it was a spiritual workshop. and he was weeping. He had tears on his cheeks. He was moved by what was happening and by the experience that he was having. Now, my old conditioning would maybe question that, but I was a little evolved by then, and I was like, wow, that is so cool. That is so courageous. And what was interesting is that there were ladies who were around in the circle, and they wanted to reach over me to give him the Kleenex box. And I remember thinking to myself, because I was in ministerial school, or I was already a minister by then. That was in 2013? 2012? I can't remember. But anyway, and it was like, no, there was nothing to fix. There was nothing to interrupt with his process. Like, it was absolutely perfect. And one of the things that I have so enjoyed about our relationship is his ability to be transparent and real about his feelings. It's something that endears me to him. I feel that there's an authenticity in this, and I just want to say how grateful I am for that. And so as we talk about this, I also realize that in a given life, there is a trajectory of how we traverse through our pathway. And as I was contemplating, this conversation, I couldn't help but think of my own dad, who was born in a completely different era. And my parents, that's my dad. That's my dad the guy is my dad. And so that's my mom and dad. And that is the front door of the house that I grew up in. And they were an absolutely beautiful couple. They were high school sweethearts, and they did what people do. They fell in love, they got married, and they had a family, and they had 4 daughters, and I'm the youngest of 4 daughters. And the era that I grew up in was the 1960s. And so we can pause there. In the 1960s. And so that's my dad in the middle. This one who seems to be pouting is me, the one with the pigtails. And that's my sister, Melissa. But that's my dad. And I wanted to share it with you because, we were raised in the 1960s. And it was a very a traditional, mom stayed home, dad went to work. And at the stage where that picture is, and the one before that, it was a very idyllic scene. It was just perfect. Mom and dad were always there for us, and I'm so grateful for that. And I know that not everybody had that experience. But the experience that I had when I was really little was that my parents were there, that dad was the hero. He was handsome, he was fun, he led the family. Dinner wasn't served until he was there. I mean, it was the family-style dinner in the evenings. He was the one that taught me, how to play cards. His name was Guido, and, an Italian man, loved to gamble. Our family trips, we went to Las Vegas. We didn't go camping, or to Florida at that time. We went to Vegas, and so I know how to play blackjacks. I know how to shoot dice. I know odds. And I, played gin rummy with him up until about the last week of his life. And that was a way that we bonded. He was also the person who took us fishing. He was somebody who said to me when I was a little girl, and this really gave me pause, but he said, "I love you so much." He said, "I love you so much, I would give my right arm for you." I always wondered, who would make you give your right arm, and what would that look like? And I was so focused on that, but what he was trying to say is that he would do anything for me. And I remember as I grew up, just like our reading said, My parents really said that they just wanted me to be happy. And I remember testing that. Did anybody test that? I tested that, and I would say, what if I did this? What if I did that? And they're like, we just want you to be happy, honey. And they meant it. Now, they were conflicted about it at times, but ultimately I knew the bottom line was that they just wanted me to be happy. And so this part of the evolution of a life where we have a parental family, a mother and a father, which represent collectively God, which represent collectively love. That between the mother and the father and our human experience, that they come together and create life. And through them, this life comes in the form of us. And there's this idea then, an idealized version of our parents. And that's where I was at this point in my life. It was an idealized version of what Dad was. I didn't really see him as human. I saw him as godlike. I couldn't see his foibles or his challenges. I saw him as Dad, and to me that meant kind of like supreme ruler, you know? And he was benevolent in that. So with God, we've made God up in our image and likeness rather than the other way around. And I think that that's something important for us to remember. Even having gender-specific ways that we refer to God is limiting. And so, like all of us, as we progress through life, there was a time when I saw my dad. And I saw him through a different prism. I saw the ways that he was failing. And there was an occurrence in our family that just seemed to rock our world. And that idyllic life just shattered. Just shattered. And it became the subject matter of therapy for a long time. It always went back to this one point, and it had to do with my dad. And I have to tell you, I was angry. I was so angry with him and so disappointed, and I believed I hated him. And I remember one of my sisters kind of shaking me and saying, you know what, Claudia? You better clean this up because Dad's not always going to be around. And it kind of shook me a little bit. And I was starting on my spiritual path, and I started to walk a different way, to see him a different way, to begin to ask for Spirit to heal my hurt, which unhealed and unexpressed became anger. Again, the feelings, pushing them away, blaming, when I reject them, I'm blaming myself. When I eject them, I'm blaming him. And I began to bring it all home and feel those feelings. And as I did so, I realized I had a willing father who was willing to walk the pathway of forgiveness with me. I didn't live near him at that time. I was an adult by this time, folks. And I used to fly to go see him. And he and I would go on long walks and talks. And I would ask him questions. And he was willing to answer them. And some of them didn't satisfy me. Some of them created more questions. But there came a time where forgiveness and the willingness to forgive And the willingness to understand shifted our relationship. And I realized that my dad was having a human experience, and he was walking his pathway just like me. And sometimes he tripped and fell. And that he needed to be embraced and loved. And that I could do that as I did my work. Later in my life, I found myself in similar situations that would lead me to the same action that my dad took that disappointed me so much. And in that moment, I realized, oh my gosh, I walk the same path too. And now I understand. I understood that his actions weren't meant to hurt or harm me, but that it was the best he could do in that moment because he was hurting. He was crying out for love and just didn't know how. As he aged, which I have a picture of him aged, as he aged, he became more tender, more open, more honest, what I would call more authentic, less feeling the need to uphold a conditioning, to uphold the norms that would have defined him as a man. He was able to do what we've been talking about. He was able to achieve a humility. He was able to take the stance that I may not know. He was able to take the posture of coming to know. He was able to release his own conditioning, what he thought he knew, what he thought he needed, and be honest and open and willing. And it was a beautiful thing to behold because we could be close, and we're close because of it. And it is my experience with my father was the first experience of the thing we call death. I was in ministerial school. I was taking pastoral care at the time. I was learning all kinds of things about how to companion a person in their transitioning experience. I had already taken on the belief that where there is life, there cannot be death. But that's challenging when you're watching somebody fade away from this experience. He was not attached to this life. He was the guy who threw away the chemotherapy and then went into spontaneous remission. He was the guy who at the end did not want to, measures to prolong his life. And the last time we played gin was about a week before he passed. And it was the longest game we ever played until I realized he was just going through the motions. And then he became unconscious, and then we had this experience where my sisters and I stayed with him as he transitioned. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And I remember getting up in the middle of the night and sitting with him and holding his hand. And I remember sensing that what was the spirit that inhabited the body had left the body, and it was hovering. And I was holding his hand, what I knew as his hand, but the connection was up here already. At my ordination, 11 years since he passed, one of my friends said, I sensed Joyce and Guido at the ordination. They're so proud of you. And I know that to be true. I share this with you because we don't know what a life is for. We don't know what the experiences are meant for. But if we believe that we are as God created us, if we believe that life is eternal, if we believe, as the reading said, that we are 100% choosing our experience, I absolutely know I chose my mom and dad. We think that we choose the experience in the confines of this particular experience. But if our life is eternal, it predates my birth and it extends beyond what we call death. And I know that I chose them. And I know that the experiences were perfect for me and my awakening, and the lessons that I have learned from my father. I share this with those who may be hurting right now, who may have challenging relationships, unfinished business and relationship, feeling a sense of loss, to extend the trajectory beyond where you are at right now. And to trust and to know that something bigger is happening. And to begin to open the heart space, to take a breath, to enter into the mindset of coming to know. Releasing what I think I know, releasing what I think I need, and the humility of coming to know, releasing my conditioning, releasing how I think this, message needs to be, releasing everything, releasing how my father should be, how my mother should be, how my husband should be. And I come into a place of coming to know, and I become open and willing. And I remember who I am, that I'm the creator of this experience. I get to experience it in an ordained way, in a dedicated way, a way dedicated to my awakening. And that all the pain, the hurt, the loss, the joys, and the love, that we can embrace it all in that one power, love. That one power embraces it all, brings it all home, integrates us all so that we can walk forth from wholeness. Not male, not female, not masculine, not feminine, but the mix and the balance of it all into our wholeness. Because God embraces it all. Love embraces it all. And so I say and claim that this experience, wherever we are on this spectrum, is perfect, is divine, is bringing us home. Take a breath with me. The divine masculine continues in my life to astound me. The strength and the power juxtaposed with the openness, the honesty, and the willingness to serve in the form of my husband, Brother T, who got during my ordination, the man supporting the woman on the stage, It says, behind every great man is a woman. Behind every great woman is a man. Behind every great being is another being. It matters not, these roles that we have defined. And since I've been a minister, this person, this man, this being has supported me to be up here, when all of his life he had been the one up here. Thank you, honey. And to be the one, and to be the one who can have the tears on the heart, and to be, there's a quote, Kathleen, that this appeared in, about the angel, that this appeared in the ordination. I'm going to send you an angel in front of you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. The angels are all around us. They're our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our husbands, our spouses, our wives, our children, our dogs, our cats, and all of the other animals that we are here to actually embrace and love too. Not to have them outside of us either. All of those animals that feed us. So, God has sent us an angel. And it's you, to prepare the place. And we do it together. I love you. God bless you. Thank you for this opportunity to share a part of my life with you, and I hope that it has been meaningful in some way. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.